Alright, this is essentially a test of me trying to record with OBS Studio as well as play through this prototype game Icon has developed called Corpse Light. I finally convinced him to move over from coding with BlitzMax to using SGDK, so this is some of the progress he has made. I may or may not have shown Eekpong. I believe I uploaded videos for Eekpong, which is a previous prototype that he wrote just to get familiar with SGDK. Moving forward, let's see. Just wanted to play through this game and essentially get my thoughts on it and talk about some of the things that I discussed with Icon. We do work together, and one of the things that you'll notice as we're playing through the game is that there's quite a bit of slowdown with the number of enemies that are on screen when there should be up to 20 bats that are on screen at one time, and once the enemies are on screen, you'll notice some significant chugging that appears. And so, very simple premise. It's kind of like Gauntlet. It's, I forgot what the actual name of the game that he was basing this idea off of. But essentially the enemies spawn in, there's going to be RPG mechanics where once you kill enemies you'll pick up loot, you can buy different perks, upgrades, whatever you want to call it, to enhance your character to basically survive longer. So even with this very simple prototype that he's developed, I gotta say it's pretty addictive. Now you'll notice that on screen, one of the things that he was running into is that I apologize, I'm quite sick still. Is that the bats will cluster together and form a line, and he was saying that maybe he needs to go in there, assuming he picks this up or decides to continue with this, would be to have some collision detection on the sprites so that they don't cluster together like that. If anyone has any ideas, feel free to comment below, especially if you're a developer, regardless of whether it's SGDK, if you're just a game designer in general. But if you're particularly familiar with the limitations of the Genesis or Mega Drive, definitely let us know. Even simple things like how they do something as far as workarounds for using, instead of using a float, using another way to essentially get values that would fit within a float range within SGDK. That was one of the things that he discussed with me at the office. If he sees this video, if I do post this online, hopefully he will comment down below, but this is more for me to get my thoughts out as far as what I think of the game, what I may try coding myself, because he's given me access to the code. I will not be showing that code on screen here because I haven't asked for his permission. I wouldn't post any of his code online unless I had permission to do so. Even if this is a prototype that he never touches again, maybe he will put it on Eeksoft, who knows. That's a discussion for another time. So as far as this game is concerned, one of the things I was thinking that to address some of the slowdown would be to obviously limit the number of assets on screen. Now, as far as one thing that you could do, and I don't remember the name of it, it's like a very primitive FPS, a first-person shooter that was on the Genesis. Those of you out there are probably screaming at me in the comment section if you know it offhand. But essentially, the HUD takes up a lot of the screen real estate, and then you have kind of less screen real estate as far as like the actual in-game action that's taking place, and apparently that's less taxing on the VDP for the Genesis to be able to draw all that stuff on screen. As far as like preventing slowdown and things of that nature, and giving it more processing power to do more complex math. So that's one thing that maybe we could implement, just increase the size of the HUD and then limit the play field as far as like what is visually shown on screen. I imagine that may be something that we could do in the vein of maybe like a Zombies Ate My Neighbors, where I know there's been optimization over the years to make Zombies Ate My Neighbors, where it doesn't show that map on the right hand side of the screen. It looks kind of janky, I guess is the best way I can describe it. If you played that and you compare it to the SNES version. But yeah, the modding community and the homebrew and hacking community for the Genesis Mega Drive and just in general for these types of games is honestly, I'm stunned by what people have the ability to accomplish. But in any event, if anybody that's a part of that community happens to stumble upon this, I would love your comments. I will probably be putting links to the Eeksoft website below in the summary of this video. So, as far as limiting the number of sprites on screen, limiting the screen real estate that we're working with here to try and free up as much memory as we can, because we're still going to have screen memory to like draw the HUD and then put the text in there, and it's a learning experience. He's still very early on in his journey with SGDK as far as learning the limitations of the Genesis or Mega Drive, whatever you want to call it. So maybe he'll figure something out. As far as how the strategies, I call it strategies, as far as the way that he goes about drawing the assets on screen, it's quite different than what I learned going through the Pigsy Retro Dev tutorial. Honestly, there's different ways to skin a cat, so by all means, if I do end up learning how to do my own games similar to what I learned through going through Icons Code, that probably won't be a problem as far as showing that stuff online, because essentially learning how to code is copying other people's work, tweaking some values, and understanding how things work, and then go from there. So he does have some other assets in here in the code. When looking at the code that are obviously not being shown on screen, all you see are just the field, the rocks there that help define the border of the game, as well as the trees. Now the trees themselves don't have collision, but I imagine he could code that in as well. Again, very, very early prototype of this game. More of a proof of concept. But I imagine probably with the reduction of the number of enemy sprites on screen and also having natural barriers in the game to kind of limit the range that the player can run around in, to basically make it more challenging. That's another thing too. Is it going to keep it all in one single map? Is there going to be thresholds within the game where it spawns another map? Is it going to be where basically every time you load up the game it just randomly chooses a map and then you play off that map? These kind of things. Hopefully he listens to this, and Icon that is, hopefully he listens to it and doesn't have to respond, but just things to think about. And he obviously knows how to get in contact with him. I'm a big supporter of his. I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. My brain is absolute pudding. It has been for a week at this point, but yeah, I'm just curious what he thinks about some of the things that I'm putting out there, things he, may want to try, ideas he had for the game that we haven't really discussed. And again, he may never pick this up again. There is the distinct possibility that he just listens to this and says, "Oh, that's cool. I'll put it in my back pocket and some stuff to consider for another game that he's developing." Again, he and I discussed about him working on a platform. He's already actually programmed a platformer, and he may start porting Nemo X or Little Nemo's Nightmare into SGDK, which is what I was doing previously. He's going to be much faster and much more efficient at it, but it was a good learning experience for me as far as learning Collision, learning how to code in general. Currently, I got to a stopping point with it because the assets that I had on screen as far as doing the collision for it, because it wasn't perfect 16 by 16 tile-based assets, the collision stuff that I was using, I don't have a copy of A-Sprite. I use LibreSprite and I use 16 tile, and essentially what I was putting in there was giving me back very different information than what you were seeing in Pixie's tutorial, probably because of the assets that I was using. And when I coded in my physics, I was basically falling through the floor, and then when I would move up, I couldn't move through the floor because, the collision is there. It's just very janky, and Pixie had mentioned in his video about that happening. But enough about that. If anybody has any ideas as far as how to improve this game, definitely leave a comment. And if you like what you saw here, comment, subscribe if you like the vibe. Cheers.